What if the thing your dog needs most from you has nothing to do with walks or food or toys or training? What if it is something so simple that when you hear it, your first instinct is going to be, that cannot be it? And what if you have been missing it every single day, not because you are a bad owner, but because nobody ever told you it was happening? Here is the uncomfortable truth. Most dogs spend their entire lives trying to communicate something specific to the person they love most. And most owners go their entire lives never fully receiving the message. Not because they do not care, because nobody ever explained what the message actually looks like. There are 5 things. 5 specific, science-backed, behavioral realities that your dog has been navigating around you probably since the first day they came home. Number 4 is the one that hits hardest. Most people who reach that point tell us they had no idea they were doing it wrong. In some cases, for years. Stay with me. By the end, something is going to change. Let us begin. 1. Stop staring your dog down. You know this moment. Your dog has done something, chewed something they should not have, knocked something over, taken food off a surface. You catch them, you turn around, and without thinking, you fix them with a long, firm, unblinking stare. You say their name in that tone. You think you are communicating disappointment. Your dog is having a completely different experience. In canine social language, a sustained, direct, hard stare is not a correction signal. It is a threat display. It is the same posture a dominant animal uses to initiate confrontation, and it is recognized as such by a dog's nervous system regardless of your intention behind it. Dr. Alexandra Horowitz, director of the Dog Cognition Lab at Barnard College and author of Inside of a Dog, has documented extensively what happens in a dog's body during these moments. The freeze that owners often interpret as guilt dog going completely still, head low, eyes looking up, body compressed is appeasement behavior. It is your dog using every signal available in their behavioral vocabulary to communicate, I am not a threat. Please do not escalate. I am trying to make this stop. This is not guilt. This has been confirmed repeatedly. Alexandra Horowitz's own research, published in the journal Behavioral Processes, used controlled conditions to show that the guilty look dogs display appears regardless of whether the dog actually did anything wrong. Dogs showed appeasement signals in response to the owner's expectation and body language, not in response to their own actions. The look was not about the chewed shoe, it was about you. And over time, this matters enormously. Research published in the Journal of Veterinary Behavior examined dogs in households where confrontational owner interactions were frequent, not abusive, not aggressive, simply frequent staring, looming, and direct physical correction. These dogs showed significantly elevated baseline anxiety levels and were measurably less likely to approach their owners voluntarily in neutral, non-threatening situations. Think about what that means. The dog who starts to avoid you, who is always slightly on guard, always calculating whether this moment of eye contact is safe, did not get there because of one bad day. They got there through the accumulation of 1,000 small moments where their body was telling them to be cautious, and they had no other option but to adapt to that. The fix is not complicated. Redirect instead of stare. Move calmly instead of loom. Use your voice to interrupt, not your eyes to challenge. A dog who trusts that your eye contact is safe is a completely different animal from one who has learned to read it as a potential threat. And the dog you actually want, the one that is relaxed around you, that chooses to be near you, that trusts you completely, can only exist if no part of them is running a continuous threat assessment every time you look their way. 2. When they come to check on you, let them finish. This one sounds small. It is not small. Your dog walks over to you when you are sitting quietly. They approach. They sniff your hand. They press their nose briefly against your arm or your face. And most owners, in that moment, immediately reach out and start petting them. It feels like the natural response. It feels like connection. But from your dog's perspective, you have just interrupted a sentence they were in the middle of speaking. Dr. Johannes Odendahl, whose research at the University of Pretoria measured neurochemical changes during human-dog interaction, established that dogs gather detailed physiological data during close olfactory contact with their bonded humans. Through a single intentional sniff, a dog can assess cortisol levels, detect hormonal changes associated with stress or illness, identify emotional states that predate behavioral expression by minutes, and update their internal model of how you are doing today versus how you were doing yesterday. This is not affection seeking, it is information gathering, purposeful and specific. When you immediately convert that moment into a petting session, you shift the dynamic entirely. You make it about your need to respond rather than their need to assess. The sentence they came to say gets overwritten by your reply before they finished it. Try something different. The next time your dog initiates a quiet check-in, approaches calmly, sniffs your hand or face, stands near you, keep your hands still. Let them take whatever time they need, and only after they have completed what they came to do. If they settle against you, look up at you, simply stand there satisfied, then respond. The difference in what you will feel from your dog in those moments is real, because you finally let them complete the thing they came to do. And a dog who is consistently allowed to finish their sentences starts saying more of them, with more frequency, more depth, and more trust that the conversation will be respected. 3. Tell them when something difficult is coming. Here is something we do to dogs every single day that we would never do to another person we cared about. We change their world without warning. A new baby arriving, moving house, a family member leaving permanently or temporarily, a new pet introduced into the home, surgery that requires a week of restriction, a period where your schedule changes completely and someone else is feeding them, walking them, being present with them. To you, these things arrive with context, mental preparation, time to emotionally process what is coming. To your dog, they simply happen. One day the world is one configuration. The next day it is something else, and they have no language to ask what is happening, no framework to understand whether the change is temporary or permanent, no way to know if the person who has left is coming back. Dr. Therese Rehn and colleagues at the Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences conducted research on cortisol patterns in dogs during household disruption. Their findings were specific. The stress response in dogs was significantly more severe when disruption was sudden rather than gradual. Dogs who had exposure to environmental changes before they were fully implemented showed markedly lower cortisol responses during the transition itself. The preparation was not magic. It was simply information communicated through experience rather than language. You cannot explain a house move to your dog in words, but you can take them to the new house before moving day and let them explore it on their own terms. You can begin transitioning their feeding schedule 2 weeks before your work hours change. You can maintain the specific anchor points of their routine, the morning walk, the evening ritual, the way you say goodnight when everything else is in flux. What most owners do is nothing, because they assume their dog will just adjust. And sometimes they do adjust, but the cost of that adjustment is real and invisible. Elevated cortisol for weeks, disrupted sleep architecture, increased vigilance that looks like behavioral problems but is actually a stress response that was never addressed. Dr. Rehn's work shows that even small acts of preparation, not grand gestures, just maintaining consistency in the things that matter most during periods of transition, measurably reduce the physiological impact of change on dogs. Your dog has been waiting their whole life for you to understand that change is not neutral for them. Even the smallest gesture of continuity in the things that anchor their sense of safety is a form of care that reaches them in ways nothing else can. 4. Let them say no. This is the one. Your dog has a vocabulary. A real one, not words, but body language, posture, movement, micro-signals that are documented, consistent, and as semantically specific as anything spoken. And within that vocabulary, they have a clear, unambiguous way of saying, "Not right now. I do not want this. Please stop." The head turning away, the lip lick that appears out of context, the slight lean back when a hand extends toward them, the yawn at an unexpected moment when nothing about the situation is tired, the body that goes still instead of soft. These are not random. These are sentences. Norwegian dog trainer and behaviorist Turid Rugas documented these signals across decades of observation, and named them calming signals, behavioral communications that dogs use both to de-escalate and to express discomfort. They are not ambiguous. They are specific, sequential, and readable. And most owners do not just miss them, they actively override them. The child who wants to hug the dog whose entire body is communicating through a turned head, a stiff posture, a lip lick, please do not, and the owner who says, go ahead, he loves it. The grooming session where the dog shows every signal of discomfort, and the owner who keeps going because it needs to be done. The stranger who reaches for the dog's head and the owner who said, sorry, she is shy, but does not step between them. Every time this happens, your dog learns something. Their communication does not work. The signals they send do not produce results. And over time, a dog who has learned their signals are consistently ignored, stops sending them in the early, subtle forms. What replaces the subtle signals is everything you did not want. The growl, the snap, the complete shutdown, not because the dog escalated, but because the escalation was the only signal left that had not been overridden. Dr. Rachel Casey at the University of Bristol's School of Veterinary Sciences published research that quantified what happens when this dynamic is reversed. Dogs who had consistent autonomy over physical interactions, whose subtle discomfort signals were honored by their handlers, showed significantly fewer anxiety behaviors across all contexts. They also formed stronger voluntary bonds with their handlers than dogs in interactions controlled entirely by the human. Less control from you, more trust from them. This is the thing your dog has been waiting for their entire life. Not for you to be perfect, not for you to be trained or knowledgeable, or to always use the right commands. For you to listen when they speak, for you to hear a no and honor it. Because a dog who trusts that their no will be respected does not need to escalate. They can communicate in the earliest, softest signal and know it will land. That is not a dog who is being managed. That is a dog who feels safe enough to tell you the truth. 5. The cliffhanger. Be the same person every day. And now we arrive at the one that changes everything. Your dog does not need you to be perfect. They do not need you to never have a bad day. They do not need you to be infinitely patient or always available or to provide constant stimulation. They do not need you to be an extraordinary owner. What they need is something that sounds almost embarrassingly simple and turns out to be one of the hardest things to consistently provide. They need to be able to predict you. Dr. Lisa Gunter at Arizona State University's Canine Science Collaboratory, whose research examines the relationship between owner behavior patterns and canine stress outcomes, has contributed to a body of evidence that produces one of the most consistently replicated findings in applied animal behavior. Unpredictability in the primary owner, not harshness, not neglect, not any dramatic failure, but simple, ordinary inconsistency is among the strongest predictors of chronic anxiety in domestic dogs. Not the owner who occasionally raises their voice, not the owner who misses a walk sometimes, the owner who is warm and engaged on the weekend and emotionally absent during the week. Who sets rules that change depending on their mood? Who is enthusiastic about play one month and too tired to engage the next? To a dog, that inconsistency is exhausting in a way that is physiologically measurable. Because here is what a dog's nervous system is doing when it cannot predict the person it is most bonded to. It monitors, constantly, at a low hum of vigilance that never quite shuts off, watching for cues, running assessments, trying to build a reliable model of who you are so it can finally, safely, relax around you. And monitoring only stops when the person being monitored has become consistent enough to trust. Dr. Gunter's research frames this in terms of secure versus insecure attachment patterns, the same framework used to understand human childhood attachment. Dogs who form secure attachments with their primary owners characterized primarily by predictability and responsiveness, not intensity or duration of interaction, showed measurably lower baseline cortisol, more confident exploratory behavior, and faster recovery from stressful events than dogs in less predictable relationships. The version of your dog you most want to see loose, present, open, trusting, fully themselves, can only exist when their nervous system has made a decision. And that decision is, I do not need to monitor this person anymore. I know who they are. I can rest. That decision cannot be made about someone who keeps changing. You do not need to be the best version of yourself for your dog. You need to be the consistent version. Feed them around the same time. Walk them with the same patience on a hard day as on an easy one. Respond to their signals with the same attention, regardless of how your afternoon went, not because your dog is demanding. Because their nervous system is running a calculation every single day, and the answer to that calculation determines whether they spend their life relaxed beside you or spending their energy managing the uncertainty of who you might be today. Your dog has been waiting their whole life for the version of you that is always the version you are. Not the best version, the reliable one. 5 things. Stop using your eyes as a threat when words and redirection would do less damage. Let them finish the sentence they came to say when they check on you. Give them the dignity of preparation when their world is about to change. Hear them when they say no, and let that be enough. And show up the same way in the moments that matter, with enough consistency that their nervous system finally decides you are safe to stop monitoring. None of these require perfection. None of them require training or expertise or resources or time you do not have. They require something much simpler and much harder. They require you to see your dog as someone who is trying to communicate, trying to trust, and trying to build something with you in the only language they have, and to decide that language is worth learning. Your dog has been offering you that conversation since the day they came home. The question that remains the one only you can answer is whether today is the day you start speaking back. Tell us in the comments, which of these 5 lands hardest for you? And what is one thing you are going to do differently this week? Because understanding your dog better is not just good for them, it changes the relationship entirely. For both of you.